19 girls teams, and of course we had the boys this evening. Before we announce the results, we have a few people that we would like to thank, without which the competition would not have been possible. To our platinum sponsor, Singer Sri Lanka PLC. Can we have a round of applause? Tickets for the finals will be available from the 12th of September at 9 a.m. at the Bishop's College Auditorium. Before we move on to introducing the judges, I would like to invite them on stage. Sri Lanka Law College. Adam holds and has held numerous board positions in public listed companies and private companies in a wide spectrum of industries. Mr. Adam Ali is an awarded orator, having won the first Toastmasters All-Ireland Speakers Contest in 1990 and captained the Sri Lanka University's debating team at international competitions. This led him to a successful career as a professional compeer, locally and overseas, and a commercial radio voice artist. Additionally, he is a leading theatre producer, director, and actor, with over 50 theatre productions to his credit, and is the co-founder of the Performing Arts Company. He was awarded the Outstanding Young Persons Award for contribution to drama and literature. He made his cinema debut as an actor in 2008 and has acted in local and international films, including with Hollywood and Bollywood stars. He won Best Supporting Actor at the Sydney Film Awards 2020 and the Producers Award at the Saraswati Film Festival 2020. He co-produced 2 internationally awarded films and received a personal nomination at Australia's Asia Pacific Screen Awards in Brisbane. He was a producer's workshop scholar at the Open Doors Lab of the Locarno Film Festival in 2017. In Rotary, he is the only scholar to twice represent Sri Lanka at the Group Study Exchange. During his presidency of the Rotary Club of Colombo Midtown, he was awarded Best President Rotary Sri Lanka, and his club was awarded the Best Rotary Club in Sri Lanka. In the sporting arena, he was Sri Lanka's undefeated Open Amateur Latin American Dance Champion in early 90s and has acquired university colours in rugby and basketball. Mr. Mohammed Akbar. Attorney at law. Moshni counts 18 years in active practice in the private bar and an advocate for alternate dispute resolution and a Singapore International Mediation Institute Level 1 accredited mediator. Moshni works closely with children and counts over 20 years of experience as a speech and drama teacher. Being the winner of several exhibition prizes herself at the Trinity College London Speech and Drama Examinations, many of the students ranging from 5 to 25 years she has coached are award winners and high scorers. A speaker of the written word, Moshni has performed poetry and prose for writers including Grecian shortlisters and world-renowned artists in live and in studio. She is a seasoned thespian and enjoys meaty roles requiring nuanced portraits. She is also one half of a duo of speech and drama teachers who in March 2020, during the COVID-19 lockdown, established Storyland SL, a YouTube channel which has gained a sizable following since its inception and now has a substantial social media presence, which uses the medium of storytelling to facilitate creativity in children, whilst enhancing their language skills and promoting lateral thinking and emotional intelligence. She is also a published children's author, building on her vast experience and expertise in teaching children's literature and drama, and her passion to create a voice for the voiceless, to create the country's first children's story to facilitate awareness on non-verbal communication, complete with a sign language tutorial at the end. Mrs. Moshni Jana. And our final judge, Mr. Harshna Rakhna. With Singular Theatre at his alma mater, St. Joseph's College, Colombo. Since then, he had been an active member of the Singular Drama Team, as well as a talented dancer in Canadian and Southern Oriental dance. His first appearance in English theatre was in 2005, when he took part in the All-Ireland Inter-School Shakespeare Drama Competition, and has been associated with the competition for the past 19 years. He has directed many Colombo and outstation schools for this competition for the past 14 years, as well as for the National English Drama Competition, in which he has achieved many significant milestones. Harshna is a well-known visiting consultant for many outstation schools and conducts workshops regularly for students in the areas such as Nigambo, Gampaha, Kandy, and Keiko. As an actor in the local English theatre circle, he has worked with several amateur theatre companies such as Centre Stage Productions, Core Theatre 7, Workshop Players, and Mad Hatter's Co., as well as managing overall production, including lights and sound management for theatre productions. Playing the role of Thisbe, he represented Sri Lanka with Centre Stage Productions to stage Pyramus and Thisbe, directed by Yohan at the National Theatre Festival held in India in 2018. Harshna's first experience with the camera was in 2016, and he has acted in multiple short movies and TV commercials. Apart from his passionate acting career, Harshna has 17 years of experience in the banking industry as a specialist in financial crime investigations and is presently employed at an international bank in the capacity of Vice President, Head of Transactions Monitoring Investigations. As a trainer, he conducts workshops for corporate employees on public speaking, presenting skills, and on financial crime risk identification. Harshna completed his Masters in Human Resource Management with the University of Northampton and holds a professional qualification in employment law. He is an accredited financial crime compliance professional and holds a diploma in applied criminology awarded by the Sri Lanka Foundation Institute. Mr. Harshna Ratna. Let me now invite Mr. Mohammed Adwani for some comments.
Thank you. Thank you for the very kind introductions and for the very kind acknowledgement of our presence. We hope that we might be celebrated in the same way after we finish and with the results. Firstly, I'd ask you to join me in raising a toast to the Rotary Club of Colombo North and the Lions. This competition is in its 41st year? 49th year, I'm sorry, 49th year. And it's an amazing effort that keeps it going. And it is so essential for this country and for theatre here, because I believe all of us here, including my colleagues in the panel, for the boys division as well, have been through this mill, and this competition has been the breeding ground for English theatre and thespians in this country over this entire period of time. And so, with its own brand now, Shakes, as it's called, this has emerged as something beyond what the organizers could possibly have hoped for when they started, and so hats off to them. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I thought that was important to mention. I'd like to also thank my colleagues on the panel. It's been a pleasure judging with them, and all of you for the performances you put up. It takes a certain amount of courage to come forward and perform at school level, and to perform in this competition takes a lot of courage. So I think, again, a round of applause to all the players. It was a long 1.5 days for us, but an enjoyable one. And I'd like to say at the outset that our decision on the awards and those that make it to the final has a degree of subjectivity. Theatre is like that. Right? You like a performance, something in the performance strikes you, something in the overall production and the impact strikes you, and your decisions about which schools make it to the next round are based on a number of criteria, much of which is subjective. But at the same time, there are the objective aspects as well, in terms of stagecraft, theatre techniques, in terms of a few things that I'm going to be talking about as shortfalls that we saw during the performances, which can be judged from an objective perspective. Right? So you may not all agree with the final decisions made, which is fine, which is how it should be. But I hope you will take from our comments some feedback about the objective aspects that can be improved as you go on in your thespian lives. Right, so what we're going to do, really, rather than talking about too much of the positives that worked out, look at some common issues that we saw in the productions that can be addressed, perhaps as you proceed. One of the biggest problems that we experienced was issues of diction and understanding of the roles that you were playing. And we found that was frequent in many productions, Um, and really, in today's context, there is little excuse for it. With the technology available to you to research the characters, the plot, the backgrounds, the history, the perspectives of writers on these characters, it's limitless. And a little bit of homework is needed for you to understand those characters yourself. And even on the aspect of diction, on clarity, there is enough of stuff for you to read up on, and certainly the directors need to take some responsibility for the lack of clarity in the lines delivered. That is an issue that we need to address in the productions that we do. So some of these diction issues arose by being too fast. There was one play in particular where we felt the cast was extremely talented, but we lost the lines entirely by just the sheer speed at which they were rattled off, with no sense of an understanding of those lines. Word endings missing, which makes the word inaudible. Wrong emphasis on syllables. Meaning lost through wrong emphasis on the words in the sentence itself. Look for the subtleties in Shakespeare's writings. Say, for instance, in the roles like Mercutio's role, the humor, the wit, the double meanings, the play on words are so essential to the character of Mercutio. And his lines ought not to be delivered just by the plain reading of what is written there. There's so much more depth to those lines and those roles than we sometimes see in the performances. The wisdom of the clown in Lear is another aspect which was lost in a lot of the productions. We had in fact one where some of his most beautiful lines were sung because there was a rhyme in the words, but that tended to lose the entire meaning of what he was saying. Another important problem is music drowning words. And that was frequent in quite a few productions. I'm sure you'll be able to figure out which they were. Using music with lyrics is an absolute disaster, because the lyrics of the song that's playing underneath interfere with the delivery of the lines on stage. Right? Music itself, without lyrics, if it overshadows the words, causes a huge problem. But when there are lyrics added in there in the song, it becomes so much more difficult for us to understand what's happening. It was tragic in the case of a couple of productions where the music was just so overpowering that the school lost out badly as a result of that. Not because we scored on the music, but just because we couldn't hear and understand the actors. On the same note, lights. So the semi-finals really, I know you guys don't get time to work with lights in the semi-finals. Like this round. It would be better to skip trying to play with fancy lights and try and get the production through without it, and keep your lighting effect for the next round, rather than taking the risk of killing the performance of the actors by them having to play in the dark. We saw that again repeatedly. Again, it impacted negatively on a couple of schools that would have fared better. So be careful. These actors, the actresses here, would have rehearsed for weeks on end, and it is sad that their production and their effort is put to the dark, literally, by the lighting misadventures of your crew. So be careful about that. Some of the acting problems involved non-involvement with the play, a lack of reaction by support casts. We had a few schools which had an ensemble, but in some of them the ensemble was there for the sake of being an ensemble and didn't really contribute to the play itself, although by and large most of the ensembles were very involved. So there was a positive, but there were also a couple of negatives with the use of the ensemble. Some of the ensembles contributed well with music, with dance, but again, if those are relevant to the play, that will add value, but otherwise it will just take away from the limited time you have to perform. There were some blocking issues, masking, speaking into the wings. There was a Shylock in particular, with an imposing personality, beautiful presence on stage, but we lost most of the lines because the Duke was positioned at the back, and that happened a couple of times actually. And you had the Shylock playing to the Duke at the back of the hall, and we were left wishing there are seats from the other side and on this side, because we lost most of the performance. So be careful about speaking into the wings, be careful about hair covering most of your face. When you turn sideways, you don't really need to address there. You can speak to a person there by addressing them from here so that you're still open to the audience. A few straight lines, playing far back, I've already mentioned that. This problem of walking around aimlessly while you deliver lines was another problem. There were some very interesting deliveries of monologues in particular, but the effect of that was lost by an aimless ambling around the stage, either by the person, in the case of a monologue, the speaker, in the case of a dialogue, even the person listening. And so after a while you're distracted by the footwork and you're trying to figure where the next step would be, rather than focus on the lines itself. Right? So just watch out for that. Some edit problems with the scripts. See, you have the freedom, which I think is a great progressive move by the organizers in giving you that freedom to pick the scenes that you'd like to do, rather than the early years of this competition where we were given the excerpts to perform. Now, with that freedom also comes some responsibility and perhaps an added burden of having to then decide how you structure that script. So there is really no excuse for you to structure it in a way that you're saddled with something that either doesn't suit your cast or doesn't convey an idea or a theme that you're trying to convey. So you can actually take a plot or a subplot of the play and see it through to completion. You can create the character arcs for your people by the selection of your excerpt. Right? And so edit has a large role to play in how that performance finally comes through. We found some plays which neither presented you a character arc of any of the characters, nor did it build a storyline. It was just sections taken at random, which when threaded together did not make much sense either way, either in terms of developing a character or characters, or in terms of presenting a storyline, a plot or a subplot from the play. So be careful about your edits. Changing period and context. I for one, and Hannah would agree with me, we are all for experimental productions. We're extremely happy to see something taken out of context, out of the traditional setting rather, or out of the traditional context in which it was written, provided that the excerpt would then justify that interpretation, that setting, as well. I mean, Julius Caesar, one of the most historical of plays that Shakespeare has written, the last character on stage somewhere says a line to the effect of how many times in the centuries ahead will this same scene be replayed. So there is really room in Shakespeare itself, and he expects that you would contextualize the play to a different time, a different place. And so that's fine. But just be careful when you do that, that there is relevance in the way that you do it, because you do take a risk with that kind of an interpretation. So don't be clever for the sake of being clever, but rather make sure that it adds to a purpose. Right? Some of the, again, acting problems, coming back to that, some details of building the character. So we need to remember the consistencies. So for instance, if the character has a limp, as we saw very often with the Lears, the limp needs to be sustained. You will find a Lear who, without even the support of his own hands, is able to go from this position all the way in a very slow move down to both knees, and then needs two people to help him out, which somehow doesn't ring true of the character, because there's no way Lear at that age could have been able to have that kind of control in his knee joints if he couldn't also pull himself up again together. So be careful about the consistency of the physicality of the characters you play, the consistency of an accent if you're using it, right? The consistency of a gesture if you're using it. Be careful that it doesn't sort of give away the fact that you're in the role right from start to finish. Careful about your pitch and tone. Some performances were really wonderful until the character got angry, and when that pitch reached a level where you went, ouch, and you couldn't bear the sound of that, and with that pitch, the words getting lost was a shame, because it really took away from the character. We had a particular performance here with a cameo role which was brilliant, well executed all the way to the end until the character decided to cry in a manner that just let the role down at the end. So be careful about things that are overdone in that way. Careful with Shakespeare's use of repetitive words. So for example, when Shylock says good news, it's not good news, good news. The good news needs to be different the first time to the good news the second time. Otherwise it becomes very rhythmic and very songish, and that's not what was really expected of you. Is it true? Is it true? Another set of lines that get repeated just like that. Is it true? Is it true? With no difference at all, while those lines are meant to be different. So be careful about those opportunities that are given in the script. Walking backwards to an actor placed behind you is an absolute no-no. So you have people going like this because the next man is on that side to speak to. Director may have told you, try not to back the audience, but if you have to turn around and go there. Going that way, it doesn't really work. Right? Okay, another thing about your props. Some of the platforms, when we saw them, we were wondering, oh my God, how is that character going to manage to get up there? And we did see difficulties. We had a play which had 16 people crowded in the back on in such a tight space that people had to virtually push one person off a platform to get down or get in front to take a line. Not necessary. There's so much space here. Right? We also had a problem with some of the schools playing a little too far back. Directors, remember your actors are school kids, their projection may not be as great as actors who are more seasoned, so play them up front rather than way back in this, on this stage. We felt that perhaps sometimes the setting had been pushed back to be able to use certain lighting facilities that were available here, but that again is at the cost of the actor. So something to be watchful about. Costume, finally. Again, no excuse, do some research. Even if you're setting it in modern, you might want to look at what that period would entail, look at how those costumes are to be used. If you're in a courtroom scene, if it's modern setting, no courtroom would really allow you to have hats on. So people with fancy hats in a courtroom would probably not go down all right, whatever the period. You might want to look out for certain insignia that you use on your uniform. We had very distinct Luftwaffe eagle on some of the uniforms in a way that dealt with the Merchant of Venice, and you were wondering whether that was deliberately put there to imply something or not, and then as the play went along we realized it was just there by accident. But it does create an intrigue which is unnecessary in the context of the play. I think I sort of covered everything that I wanted to say. I've taken a little longer than I should have, but my colleagues. Thank you for your patience here.
I was also down there. Now it's about 30 years, so I understand how you must be in anticipation, waiting for the results. I'm not going to take too long. Also, I don't have to because Adam has covered most of it, but permit me to just highlight a few things that to me were essential, and I'm so glad to report that my brother judges and I were aligned in our determination, the way we analyzed the performances and our understanding of how Shakespeare should be performed. Not that we looked at it from a very narrow lens, we did look at it from a very wide lens, and we were open, we were waiting, and we were willing to be convinced by your performances. And so let me just reassure you that the results today are what we have arrived at after considering everything, and we've given a very wide margin, taking into consideration that the performers are young children, we're all young, and so we do also appreciate the restrictions that you have and the resources that are at your disposal. So please bear that in mind. But having said that, it is of paramount importance, I believe, that when we perform Shakespeare, that we understand the text. And to us, my brother judges and I, that was of paramount importance. I think we are all able to accept that when it comes to Shakespeare, the beauty of Shakespeare's work is in his words. Even if you don't have elaborate costumes, props, sets, you can still do justice to his text if you just simply take the time to sit down and try to understand what he's trying to say. And when I say that, I don't mean just taking the script and just reading it at surface level. When it comes to Shakespeare, there is just a wealth of meaning in his words if you just take the time to sit down and unpack what he has said. You have to just scratch a little bit and then you see the depth of meaning that lies beneath. And to us, the performances that nudged ahead were those that gave us some indication that the performers and the directors had done a little bit of work and tried to understand. So we saw a little bit of, I would have liked to see a more nuanced interpretation of some of the characters, but that is not to say that there weren't. But these nuances come, you are able to provide that extra layer only if you take the time to understand. So just a little bit of advice, unsolicited even if it is, but in the future, don't be in a hurry to get on stage, learn your lines, and put the play together. I'm telling you, it will be well worth your time to just take a week, 2 weeks even if you have just a week for your performance for the semi-finals, that's okay. It won't be a waste of time to just sit around in a circle, take your script, and try to understand. Just read through it and try to understand what Shakespeare is saying. Because if you understand it, you're 75% of the way through. Because if you understand what is happening, what Shakespeare is trying to convey, then naturally your portrayal will be true to the text. So, just to segue from that, one thing that perhaps I can touch on, which Adam didn't, was that when you are doing an edit of the script, just please bear in mind that it has to lend to the overall situation, the plot. We saw a few instances where, there were a few soliloquies that had been picked out from here and there, which perhaps the director or whoever the artistic director thought would be ideal for a particular child, a particular student, because this student has these particular strengths. But it had no relevance, and we were trying to, we found it difficult to understand why this particular extract had been chosen. The extracts we thought worked well were the ones that were able to convey the overall premise of the play. Obviously, you can't perform the entire play, which is why you have 30 minutes. But the ones we thought did well were those where the edits incorporated the essential elements of Shakespeare's, that particular, whatever play it was, and also was able to convey the progression, the development of the main characters, or even the smaller characters, because that is important. Some characters are there from beginning to end, and if we are unable to understand what the background is, what happened before that particular scene, then we can't understand why that character is doing what that character is doing in this particular scene. So the good edits, the good scripts were those which were able to convey the context of the situation that was being performed. Something that to me is very important is intonation and modulation, and I thought that was lacking quite a bit. Adam touched on this. Shouting is not anger, and crying is not sadness. You don't have to shout to convey anger, you don't have to cry to convey sadness. All this to say, if you truly understand what you're saying, then your volume will naturally change as you perform your lines. Your tone will not be just one tone from beginning to end. You will naturally intone. So the modulation, the intonation, the inflection, the performances that we will later on divulge to you were the ones that we were impressed with the most, were the ones where we felt there was a true, sincere understanding of the lines which enabled the performer to bring that a varied intonation and a lot of color to their voices, to their volume. You know, projection does not mean shouting the entire time. Projection means audibility, being able to be heard, but at the same time that does not mean that if you speak quietly, I mean, Lionel has the best acoustics in this country, I believe, you can still be heard even if you are whispering. Also when you're performing Shakespeare, rhythm and meter are very important. We saw sometimes in a few plays that there was sadly no appreciation of that iambic pentameter, not to say that you have to be rigid in it, but when performing Shakespeare. So we have to respect and honor the bard. So the performances that we're able to respect the meter and rhythm of the text, we felt were able to nudge a little ahead. Yes, I'm not going to ramble on. I think I touched what I thought was important. Over to you, Harsha.
Alright, I'll keep it short, I promise. Alright, so I completely agree with Adam and Moshini about the understanding of the text. Yes, the priority should be given to the delivery of the text. You need to remember your lines, you need to understand your lines, and you respect the pentameter. But the understanding of the lines itself is not enough. You need to feel what the character would be feeling at that particular point of the play. Right? So if you are able to feel it, and if you are able to present it, then the audience will feel it with you. Right? So remember on that. And an important thing for the young directors here, it's okay to be inspired by a past Shakespeare drama production which is on YouTube. But putting it on stage a few years later, the same thing, that might not bring your creativity out. That might have an impact on your originality, your creativity. So be careful about that. It's always okay to be inspired and see what better can you do than that, because we have seen it already. And when it comes to the actors, I think, yes, your directors would have given you the scripts and you have a very good understanding about the maybe 15, 16 pages that you're doing, but that is not enough. You need to know where was your character before this part of the play, and what's going to happen to this character after your plot at the end. If you have that overall understanding, then you will have the understanding on the overall journey of the character, and that will help you to bring out what is expected in the plot that you have selected. Last, but definitely not the least, timing. You might think that the judges and the organizers are not taking seriously when it comes to timing. A couple of minutes here and there won't make a big difference. No, we do take it very seriously. And there are a couple of plays that went way over, close to 35, and that is not great. So, directors, I'm sure you guys are timing the show, and make sure that you guys present your show within that timeline of 30 minutes of the play. Right, so that's it from me, and thank you very much.
Okay, right, so what we're going to do, thank you first of all, Pastor and Moshi, for assisting me with this. We're going to, three of us are going to give you the nominees of the awards. And then the organizers will tell you who the winners of those awards are. And before we announce the 4 final schools, before they announce the 4 final schools, we just want to talk to you about the 3 schools that also were closely in the running to get into the final. So unfortunately only 4 schools can perform a second time, but we thought mentioning the other 3 has been shortlisted down to 7 before we picked 4. We thought that might also encourage those of you who felt that you've done reasonably well to that you were close. Okay, so I'm going to take the easiest route. The nominees for stagecraft, there were just 3 nominations for stagecraft. We had, in no particular order, we don't know what the schools are, perhaps you can help us with that, G18, G20, and G15. In picking those nominees, we looked at everything from how the space had been used. So if it had been used with a set, how effective that was, how convenient that was.